John Holt wiped sawdust from his hands and checked the clock above his woodshop classroom. 3:15. Cass would be getting out of school soon, excited about his 7th birthday party. John had spent the morning cutting precise joints for the dining table. He was building work that required focus, the kind that kept his mind sharp after 15 years of fighting fires. The drive home took 12 minutes through Asheville's winding streets. John pulled into their driveway and saw neighbors' cars already lined up along the curb. Through the kitchen window, he spotted balloons and heard children's laughter. "Dad!" Cass ran toward him as he entered through the back door. "Look what Mom made." The chocolate cake sat on the counter, 3 layers high, with blue frosting spelling out, "Happy 7th birthday, Cass." Mina stood beside it, smoothing her dress. She looked perfect as always. "Beautiful work," John said, kissing her cheek. Her perfume smelled different today, something new. "The kids are in the backyard," Mina said. "I was just about to bring the cake out." John watched through the sliding glass door as 7 children chased each other around their wooden swing set. Cass had made friends easily since they'd moved to Asheville 2 years ago. The boy was sensitive, maybe too much so, but he was smart. Always watching, always listening. "Ready for cake?" Mina called out, carrying the platter outside. The children gathered around the picnic table. John stood behind Cass as they sang "Happy Birthday." His son's face glowed with pure joy. This was what mattered: family, stability, the life John had built after leaving the fire department. Cass blew out the candles. Mina cut generous slices, handing them out on paper plates decorated with superheroes. John noticed she gave Cass an extra-large piece from the center. "This is so good," Mrs. Holt said Tommy from next door. "Thank you, sweetie." Mina beamed. "I used a special recipe." John took a bite of his own slice. Rich chocolate, perfectly moist. Mina had always been talented in the kitchen, among other things. He watched Cass devour his piece with the enthusiasm only a 7-year-old could manage. 20 minutes later, Cass dropped his plastic fork. "Dad!" His voice sounded strange, thin. John looked over. Cass was holding his stomach, his face pale. "I don't feel good." "What kind of not good?" John knelt beside his son's chair. "My tummy hurts, and my heart feels funny." John placed his hand on Cass's forehead. No fever, but the boy's skin felt clammy. "Let's get you inside." As John helped Cass stand, the boy's legs buckled. John caught him, feeling his son's body trembling. "Mina." She appeared at his side instantly. "What's wrong?" "He's sick. Look at him." Cass's lips had taken on a blue tinge. His breathing came in short, rapid bursts. "Maybe he ate too much cake," Mina suggested. John lifted Cass into his arms. The boy felt light, too light. "This isn't from eating too much. Something's wrong." Cass began to shake violently. His eyes rolled back, showing white. "Call 911, John commanded, already moving toward the front door. "Tell the other parents to take their kids home." John's truck sat in the driveway. He'd driven to enough emergency calls to know time mattered. The hospital was 8 minutes away if he pushed it. Cass convulsed in the passenger seat, his small body rigid against the seatbelt. John pressed the accelerator harder, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. In his rearview mirror, he saw Mina's car following, but she was driving slowly, like she had all the time in the world. The emergency room doors slid open as John carried his son inside. "I need help. My boy collapsed at his birthday party." A nurse rushed over with a wheelchair. "What are his symptoms?" "Convulsions, trouble breathing, his lips turned blue." They wheeled Cass into a treatment room. John paced the hallway as medical staff worked. Through the window, he watched them attach monitors, star and 4 check vitals. The steady beep of machines filled the air. Dr. Patel emerged 30 minutes later, her expression serious. "Mr. Holt? I'm Dr. Patel. Your son is stable now, but I need to ask you some questions." "What happened to him?" "His heart rate was dangerously irregular when he arrived. We've also noted some discoloration and the convulsions you described. These symptoms..." She paused. "They're not consistent with a simple stomach ache or food allergy." John's chest tightened. "What are you saying? Are you saying you really don't know what this is?" Dr. Patel's dark eyes studied his face. "Because these symptoms suggest exposure to a specific type of toxin." "Toxin?" John's voice cracked. "What kind of toxin?" We've drawn blood for a full toxicology panel. We should have results within a few hours. The automatic doors whooshed open. Mina walked in, her makeup still perfect, not a hair out of place. She moved with unhurried steps, checking her phone as she approached. "How is he?" she asked. "Where were you?" John's voice was sharper than he intended. "I had to clean up the party mess and make sure all the children got home safely." Mina touched his arm. "You know how parents worry." Dr. Patel looked between them. "Mrs. Holt, I need to ask about your son's activities today. What did he eat? Was he playing in any unusual areas? Just normal birthday party food? Cake, juice, some chips. What about your yard? Any plants or chemicals he might have gotten into?" Mina shook her head. "I keep a very clean garden. Everything is safe." John watched his wife's face as she spoke. Something in her tone bothered him, but he couldn't place what. "We'll know more when the blood work comes back," Dr. Patel said. "For now, he needs to stay overnight for observation." John spent the night in the hospital chair beside Cass's bed. His son slept fitfully, occasionally crying out in his dreams. Mina had gone home around midnight, claiming she needed rest to take care of things in the morning. Rowan Fitch arrived at dawn with coffee and donuts from the shop downtown. "Heard what happened," Rowan said, settling into the visitor's chair. "How's the little man?" "Stable. They're running tests." Rowan had been John's best friend since they'd moved to Asheville. As a paramedic, he understood the medical side of emergencies better than most. They'd met when John started teaching at the high school, and Rowan's daughter was in his woodshop class. "What kind of tests?" "Toxicology. Doctor thinks he was exposed to something." Rowan's expression grew serious. "At a birthday party? That's what I can't figure out." Dr. Patel knocked on the doorframe. "Mr. Holt, could I speak with you privately?" John followed her into the hallway. Rowan came too, introducing himself as the family's close friend and explaining his medical background. "The blood work came back," Dr. Patel said. "Your son has digoxin toxicity in his system." "Digoxin?" Rowan frowned. "That's a heart medication." "Exactly. But more importantly, it's the active compound found in foxglove plants. Digitalis purpurea." John felt the world tilt. "Foxglove. It's extremely toxic, especially to children. The concentration in your son's blood was significant enough to cause the cardiac irregularities and neurological symptoms." "How would he get exposed to that?" John asked the doctor. Patel's expression was grave. "This compound doesn't appear in cake by accident. This was prepared." The words hit John like a physical blow. "Prepared. Someone had deliberately put foxglove into his son's birthday cake." "You're saying someone poisoned my boy?" "I'm saying the toxin didn't get there naturally. We're required to report this to the authorities." John's mind raced. Who would want to hurt Cass? Who had access to the cake? Rowan pulled him aside. "John, I know this is hard to hear, but you need to think about who was around that cake before the party." John already knew the answer. Mina had been alone in the kitchen all morning. She'd made the cake herself, cut it herself, served it herself. But why? What possible reason could she have? "I need to see my son," John said, back in the room. Cass was awake, picking at the hospital breakfast. "Dad, when can I go home?" "Soon, buddy. How are you feeling?" "Better. But I had scary dreams." John sat on the edge of the bed. "What kind of dreams?" Cass looked toward the door, then whispered, "About the man in our garage." John's blood chilled. "What man?" "The one Mom talks to sometimes. When you're at work." The pieces began falling into place, but John kept his voice calm. "What does this man look like?" "Tall. He has dark hair and muscles like you. But his eyes are mean." "Has Mom told you not to talk about this man?" Cass nodded solemnly. "She said it's a secret. But secrets make my tummy hurt now." That evening, after Mina had gone home again, John sat alone with Cass. The boy was coloring in a book Rowan had brought, his small tongue poking out in concentration. "Cass, can you tell me more about Mom's friend?" Cass set down his crayon. "You won't be mad. I won't be mad at you. Ever. Mommy said I shouldn't tell you about the man she kisses in the garage." The words landed like hammer blows. John forced himself to breathe normally, to keep his expression neutral. Cass was watching him carefully, looking for signs of anger or disappointment. "When does this happen?" "After school sometimes. When you're still at work. She tells me to go to my room and watch TV. But you can see the garage from your window." Cass nodded. I don't mean to spy, but sometimes I hear them talking loud. What do they talk about? I don't know all the words. But last week, the man said something about me being a problem, and Mom said she would handle it. John's hands clenched into fists under the blanket. Handle it. A week ago. And then yesterday, Cass had been poisoned. Has Mom said anything else about keeping secrets? She told me that some secrets are good secrets, like surprise parties. But some secrets are grown-up secrets that kids don't need to worry about. What kind of grown-up secret is this? Cass's voice dropped to a whisper. She said if I told you about her friend, it would make you very sad. And maybe you would go away like Tommy's dad did. John reached over and took his son's small hand. Listen to me, Cass. I will never leave you. Never. And you did the right thing by telling me. I was scared to tell because of what happened at my party. What do you mean? Mom said if I was a good boy and didn't talk about her friend, my party would be perfect. But then I got sick anyway. The timeline crystallized in John's mind. Cass had witnessed Mina's affair. She tried to keep him quiet with promises and threats. When that didn't work, she'd escalated to something far more sinister. His wife had poisoned their son to protect her secret. John kissed Cass's forehead. You're the bravest boy I know, and you're safe now. But even as he said the words, John knew the truth. Cass wouldn't be safe until Mina was stopped. And stopping her would require more than accusations. It would require proof. John brought Cass home the next afternoon. The boy seemed fragile, staying close to John's side as they walked through the front door. Mina waited in the living room, her face arranged in an expression of maternal concern. My baby, she said, reaching for Cass. How are you feeling? Cass allowed the hug, but didn't return it with his usual enthusiasm. John watched the interaction carefully, noting how his son's shoulders tensed. The doctor says he needs rest, John said, and we have to watch for any recurring symptoms. Of course. I've cleared my schedule to take care of him. John nodded, keeping his expression neutral. I'll be working in the garage tonight. Need to finish that cabinet order. Don't work too late, Mina said, already turning her attention back to Cass. John's garage workshop was separate from the main garage where they parked cars. It was his sanctuary, filled with hand tools and half-finished furniture projects. But tonight, it would serve a different purpose. He waited until after dinner, after Cass was in bed and Mina was watching her evening shows. Then he slipped into the garage and began his real work. Mina's phone lay charging on the kitchen counter. John had watched her enter the passcode countless times Cass's birthday. Within minutes, he disabled her automatic backup to the cloud and copied her data to his laptop, but phones could be wiped clean. He needed something more permanent to in their bedroom closet. He found Mina's old iPad tucked behind a stack of sweaters. She'd upgraded to a newer model months ago and forgotten about this one. John powered it up, still logged into her Apple account, still syncing her emails and photos. He carried it to his workshop and connected it to his laptop, installing a sync application that would mirror everything to his hard drive. Every email, every photo, every calendar entry would now automatically copy to his computer. Then he returned the iPad to the closet and went back to sanding cabinet doors until midnight. The next morning, John made coffee and scrambled eggs while Mina showered. When she came downstairs, he was reading the local paper. How did you sleep? She asked, pouring coffee into her favorite mug. Fine. You? I kept checking on Cass. I'm still so worried about what happened. John looked up from the sports section. Doctors said the toxicology showed something called digoxin from a plant called foxglove. Mina's hand stilled on the coffee pot. Just for a second, but John caught it. Foxglove? I've never heard of that. Apparently, it's pretty common in gardens around here. Grows wild sometimes. How strange. Mina sat across from him. I wonder where he could have been exposed to it. John folded the paper. That's what I keep thinking about. Over the next 3 days, John maintained his normal routine. He went to work, came home, helped Cass with homework, ate dinner with his family. But every night, after everyone was asleep, he reviewed the data streaming to his laptop. The emails painted a clear picture. Mina had been corresponding with someone named Ellis Brantley for 4 months. The messages started professionally. Ellis ran a tactical training facility outside town and had contacted her about catering an event. But the tone shifted quickly to flirtation, then to explicit exchanges. The photos were worse. Mina and Ellis in their bedroom, in the kitchen, in the garage. Pictures taken while John was at work and Cass was at school. The timestamps showed the affair had intensified in recent weeks, but it was the calendar entries that made John's stomach turn. Every Tuesday and Thursday, Mina had blocked out time-marked personal appointment. Those were the days she told John she was running errands or meeting friends. The most recent entry, dated the day before Cass's party, simply read, "Handle the C situation." John found Rowan at the fire station during his lunch break. His friend was restocking the paramedic unit, checking supplies with methodical precision. "Got a minute?" John asked. "Always." "How's Cass doing?" "Better. But I need to ask you something confidential." Rowan closed the supply cabinet and gave John his full attention. "What's going on?" "That blood work from the hospital. The digoxin. Is there any way to trace where it came from?" "Maybe. Why are you asking?" John had debated how much to tell Rowan. His friend was trustworthy, but this was dangerous territory. Still, he needed help from someone with medical knowledge. "I think someone deliberately poisoned my son." Rowan's expression darkened. "John, that's a serious accusation." "I know, but the timing doesn't make sense. He was fine all day, then got sick right after eating cake that only Mina had access to." "Have you talked to the police?" "Not yet. I need more than suspicion." Rowan was quiet for a moment, processing. "There might be something. I collected the samples from Cass's vomit when we first brought him in. Standard procedure, but they might still have them in the lab." "Could you test them again?" "Look for traces of the actual plant material. I could run it through our system. If there are foxglove particles, we'd be able to identify them." "How long would that take?" "A day or two." "But John, if this comes back positive, then I'll know for sure." "And then what?" John met his friend's eyes. "Then I'll make sure it never happens again." The next evening, Rowan called with the results. "You were right," he said without preamble. There were foxglove fragments in the stomach contents. Plant material that was mixed into something else. Something with a chocolate base. John closed his eyes. Hearing the confirmation felt like a punch to the gut, even though he'd expected it. "There's something else," Rowan continued. "I checked with the Botanical Society. Foxglove used to grow wild in your area, but most of it was cleared when your subdivision was built. There's only one place it still grows naturally within 5 miles of your house." "Where?" "The old Miller property. It backs up to that tactical training place, Brantley Defense Solutions." "Ellis Brantley." The name from Mina's emails. "Rowan, I need you to document everything. Keep copies of the lab results, the samples, all of it." "John, what are you planning?" "I'm going to stop her before she tries again." Detective Cal Turman had 23 years on the Asheville police force. John had met him once before at a school safety presentation. The man was methodical, suspicious by nature, and known for building airtight cases. John sat across from him in the detective's small office, a manila folder on the desk between them. "Mr. Holt, these are serious allegations you're making. I understand that. You're saying your wife tried to poison your son to cover up her affair. I'm saying she did, and I'll prove it." John opened the folder and spread out printed emails, photos, and lab reports. He walked Turman through the timeline methodically. Like building a piece of furniture, each joint had to be perfect. The toxicology shows digoxin poisoning. The lab results confirm foxglove plant material in his stomach. My wife had exclusive access to the cake, and she's been having an affair with a man whose property has foxglove growing on it. Turman examined the documents carefully. "How did you obtain these emails and photos?" "They were syncing to an old device in our home that she'd forgotten about." "Legally obtained, then?" "Yes." "And the child? Would he be willing to testify about witnessing the affair?" "If necessary. But I prefer to keep him out of it if possible." Turman leaned back in his chair. "The problem is motive. Why would she risk poisoning her own child just to hide an affair? Divorce is messy, but it's not criminal." John had wondered the same thing. But then he'd remembered something from their marriage counseling years ago, back when they'd hit a rough patch after moving to Asheville. "Detective, there's something else. Mina has a history of extreme reactions when she feels cornered. 3 years ago, she lied to my employer about me hitting her when I threatened to leave her for not working. She fabricated bruises with makeup and everything. Was there a police report? No. My principal called me in for a meeting, and I was able to prove I was in Charlotte that weekend for a conference. But it showed me what she was capable of when desperate. Terman made notes on a legal pad. Still, poisoning a child, she's desperate again. This time the stakes are higher. If I found out about the affair and filed for divorce, she'd lose custody because of her behavior. Cass is the only witness to what she's been doing. So you think she was trying to kill him? I don't know. Maybe just make him sick enough to damage his credibility. Or scare him into staying quiet. Terman studied the photos again. We need more. This is circumstantial. A good defense attorney would tear it apart. What kind of more? Direct evidence. A recording of her admitting it. Something that proves intent. John nodded. He'd suspected this would be the answer. Can you get that? Terman asked. I can try. Mr. Holt, I need to be clear about something. If you're going to attempt to record your wife, you need to be very careful about how you do it. North Carolina is a one-party consent state, which means you can record conversations you're part of. But you cannot place hidden recording devices to capture conversations between other people. I understand. And if you're wrong about this, I'm not wrong. Terman gathered the papers and returned them to the folder. I'm going to start a preliminary investigation. Quietly. But I need you to be careful. If your wife is capable of poisoning a child, she's capable of escalating if she feels threatened. John stopped at Radio Shack on his way home from school. The digital voice recorder was small enough to fit inside Cass's teddy bear, and it would capture 8 hours of audio on a single battery charge. That evening, while Mina cooked dinner, John took the bear to his workshop. With a craft knife, he opened a small seam in the back and inserted the device, then stitched it closed with thread that matched the brown fur. Cass, he called. Come here for a minute. His son appeared in the doorway, still moving carefully as he recovered from the poisoning. I fixed Mr. Bear's arm where it was coming loose, John said, handing over the stuffed animal. But I need you to do something for me. What? Keep Mr. Bear with you all the time, especially when Mom comes to talk to you at bedtime. Cass hugged the bear tighter. Why? John knelt to meet his son's eyes. Because I want to make sure you're safe. And Mr. Bear is going to help me do that. Is Mom going to get in trouble? The question broke John's heart. A 7-year-old shouldn't have to worry about his mother being dangerous. I don't know, buddy. But whatever happens, you'll be safe. I promise. That night, John listened from the hallway as Mina tucked Cass into bed. Their conversation seemed normal. She read him a story, kissed his forehead, told him she loved him. But the next night was different. John retrieved the bear the following morning while Cass was at school and Mina was at the grocery store. He transferred the audio file to his computer and put on headphones. The recording was clear. After the normal bedtime routine, there was silence for 20 minutes. Then Mina's voice, softer than usual. Cass, are you awake? Yeah, Mom. I need to talk to you about something important. About keeping secrets. I know about secrets. Good. Because we have a very special secret, don't we? About Mommy's friend who comes to visit. Dad asked me about him. John's breath caught. He turned up the volume. What did you tell Daddy? Nothing. I kept the secret like you said. That's my good boy. But Cass, this is very important. We don't talk about Mommy's friend, remember? He helps us, and Daddy doesn't need to know everything. Why not? Because some things are just between us. And if you tell Daddy about my friend, it would hurt his feelings very much. You don't want to hurt Daddy, do you? No, you only got sick because you weren't listening. So listen now. John's blood went cold. She was blaming Cass for his own poisoning, making him think it was his fault for not keeping the secret. I was listening, Mom. I didn't tell. I know, sweetheart, and that's why you're going to get better. But if you ever forget and tell Daddy about her secret, something much worse might happen. Worse than getting sick. Much worse. So we're going to keep our secret forever, aren't we? Yes, Mom. Good. Now go to sleep. John saved the file to multiple locations and made backup copies. Then he called Detective Terman. I need you to look into something John told his cousin Brina when she stopped by the house the next day. As a school administrator, she understood bureaucracy and paperwork better than most people. What kind of something? Brina asked, settling onto the couch with her coffee. Insurance. Life insurance policies. On who? John glanced toward the kitchen, where Mina was cleaning up lunch dishes. On Cass, Brina's expression grew serious. John, what's going on? He gave her the short version, the poisoning, the affair, his suspicions. Brina listened without interruption, her face growing more troubled with each detail. You think she took out a policy on Cass without telling you? I think she's been planning this for longer than I realized. That would require your signature as the other parent, unless she forged it. Brina was quiet for a moment. I might be able to help. I have contacts at some of the major insurance companies through the school district's employee benefits program. Can you check without raising flags? I'll be discreet. 2 days later, Brina called with an answer. You were right, she said. Mutual of Carolina issued a term life policy on Cass 3 weeks before his birthday. $500,000. John's hand tightened on the phone. Who's the beneficiary? Mina. And John, the signature on the application isn't yours. How can you tell? I compared it to your signature on Cass's school forms. It's close, but not exact. The capital letters are wrong. Can you give me copies? Already done. I'm bringing them over tonight. When Brina arrived that evening, she handed John a manila envelope. Inside were photocopies of the insurance application, complete with forged signatures and medical information. There's something else, Brina said. The application lists Cass as having no pre-existing medical conditions, but it was filed the same day Mina took him to the pediatrician for what she called routine blood work. She was establishing a baseline, making sure he was healthy before she poisoned him. John studied the forged signature. It was good enough to fool a busy insurance clerk, but not good enough to stand up to scrutiny. Brina, I need you to keep copies of everything. Store them somewhere safe, away from your house. You really think I think she's already tried to kill my son once. And with this much money at stake, I don't think she's done. The next morning, John took the insurance documents to Detective Turman. The detective examined them carefully, comparing the signatures with John's real signature from his driver's license. This is fraud, Turman said. Federal fraud, since it crosses state lines. Is it enough to arrest her? Combined with everything else? It's building a case. But I want to see what happens with that recording you mentioned. I'm working on it. How? John had been thinking about this for days. Mina was careful around him now, suspicious of his questions. But she was also getting desperate. He could see it in the way she watched him, the way she jumped when the phone rang. I'm going to give her an opportunity to panic. John waited until Friday afternoon to set his plan in motion. Cass was at school, Mina was at her yoga class, and he had 2 hours to prepare. He loaded camping gear in his truck tent, sleeping bags, Coleman stove, everything needed for a father-son weekend in the mountains. Then he drove to Rowan's house and left the gear in his friend's garage. When Mina came home, John was sitting at the kitchen table with maps spread out. What's all this? She asked. Planning a camping trip. Cass and I are going to head up to the Blue Ridge tomorrow morning. He needs some fresh air after being cooped up since the hospital. Mina's face went pale. Camping? Is that safe? He just got out of the hospital. Doctor cleared him for normal activities. Besides, it'll be good for both of us to get away for a few days. A few days? 3 or 4. There's a great campground near Grandfather Mountain. We'll do some hiking, maybe try fishing. John watched his wife process this information. Taking Cass away meant taking him away from her influence. It meant putting distance between her and the only witness to her crimes. I don't think that's a good idea, she said. What if he has another episode? You be hours from medical help. Rowan's coming with us. If anything happens, we'll get him to a hospital. This was a lie, but Mina didn't know that. Maybe I should come too. It's a guy's trip. Besides, you could use some quiet time to yourself. That evening, John made a show of packing. He loaded his truck with visible camping supplies, making sure Mina could see everything from the kitchen window. Saturday morning, he woke Cass early. Ready for our adventure, buddy? Cass was excited. He'd been looking forward to camping since John first mentioned it. They ate breakfast together while Mina stayed in bed, claiming a headache. Tell Mom goodbye, John said as they loaded the last of their gear. Cass ran upstairs and returned a few minutes later. She said to be careful and call her tonight. We will. John drove toward the mountains, taking the route Mina would expect. But after 20 minutes, he circled back through side roads to Rowan's house. His friend was waiting in the garage. "You sure about this?" Rowan asked. "She's going to panic when she realizes we're really gone. And when people panic, they make mistakes. Where will you actually be?" "Here. Your guest room has a clear view of our house. I want to see who shows up." John had borrowed high-powered binoculars from another teacher who was into birdwatching. From Rowan's upstairs window, he had a perfect view of his own driveway and front door. They didn't have to wait long. At 3 o'clock, a black pickup truck pulled into John's driveway. A tall man with dark hair got out and walked to the front door without knocking. Mina let him in immediately. Ellis Brantley. The photos from Mina's phone hadn't done justice to his size. The man was built like a soldier, with the kind of controlled movements that suggested training in violence. "That's him," John told Rowan. "That's the guy she's been sleeping with." "What do you think they're talking about?" John adjusted the binoculars, wishing he could see through walls. "Let's find out." Detective Turman had positioned unmarked surveillance across the street, hidden behind a moving truck that belonged to neighbors who were actually relocating. John had coordinated with him that morning, giving him a heads up about the fake camping trip. Sunset. Ellis came outside alone. Instead of leaving, he walked around the house, checking windows and doors. He spent several minutes examining the locks on the garage and back door. "He's casing the place," Rowan observed. "For what?" They got their answer when Ellis returned to his truck and pulled out a large duffel bag. Whatever was inside was heavy enough to require both hands to carry. John's phone buzzed with a text from Detective Turman. "Audio recording active. Stay put." An hour later, Ellis emerged again. This time he was carrying something different, a small cooler. He loaded it into his truck and drove away. John's phone rang. "Turman, we got it," the detective said. "Clear audio of them discussing plans to kill you and make it look like a camping accident. She's also on tape admitting to poisoning your son." John's knees went weak. Even though he'd suspected, hearing the confirmation felt surreal. "What did they say exactly?" "They were planning to follow you to the campground tonight. Make it look like you fell off a cliff while hiking. With you gone and Cash traumatized, she'd get full custody and the insurance money from his eventual death. And Cass, they discussed waiting a few months, then making his death look like suicide. Apparently kids who lose parents to accidents sometimes." Turman's voice trailed off. "Sometimes what?" "Sometimes harm themselves out of grief. At least, that's what they were planning to claim." John closed his eyes. His wife and her boyfriend had been planning to murder him and his son for insurance money. "When are you moving in?" "Now. We have enough for arrest warrants. This ends tonight." John returned home at midnight, making enough noise with his truck to alert the neighbors. He wanted witnesses to the fact that he'd come back safely from his camping trip. The house was dark except for a light in the bedroom. John parked in the driveway and walked to the front door. Knowing that Detective Turman's team was positioned around the property, he opened the door with his key and called out, "Mina, we're back early." Cass forgot his inhaler. Silence. Then footsteps upstairs. Mina appeared at the top of the stairs in a robe, her hair perfect despite the late hour. "You're back already? Is everything okay?" Cass started wheezing after dinner. Didn't want to risk it without his inhaler. John kept his voice normal, casual. Behind him, Cass played his part perfectly, coughing occasionally and staying close to his father's side. "Where's his inhaler?" Mina asked, coming downstairs. "Medicine cabinet in our bathroom." As Mina turned toward the hallway, Detective Turman stepped through the front door. "Mina Holt, you're under arrest for the attempted murder of a minor." Everything happened quickly after that. 2 more officers entered through the back door. Mina's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, fear, and then cold calculation. "I want a lawyer," she said. "That's your right," Turman replied, producing handcuffs. "You're also under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and child endangerment." As they led Mina to the police car, she looked back at John. Her expression held no remorse, only fury at being caught. "This isn't over," she said. John put his arm around Cass, who was watching his mother being arrested with wide, frightened eyes. "Yes, it is," John replied. 30 minutes later, another police car arrived. Ellis Brantley was in the back seat, his hands cuffed behind him. He stared straight ahead as they drove past, refusing to look at the house. Detective Turman returned to brief John on what happened next. Brantley was picked up at his facility. We found foxglove plants in a greenhouse behind his main building, along with equipment for processing plant materials into powder form. What about weapons? That's where it gets interesting. His federal firearms license expired 6 months ago, but he's been continuing to acquire tactical equipment. That's federal charges on top of the conspiracy. How long before trial? Could be a year or more, but they'll both be held without bail. The evidence is overwhelming. John nodded. A year felt like forever, but at least Cass would be safe. Mr. Holt, you should know that child services will need to interview Cass. Standard procedure in cases involving harm to minors. Will he have to testify? Probably not. The recordings and physical evidence are strong enough without putting him through that trauma. After the police left, John sat with Cass in the living room. The boy was exhausted, but too wound up to sleep. Is Mom coming back? Cass asked. John chose his words carefully. Not for a long time. Maybe never. Because she tried to hurt me, yes. Cass was quiet for several minutes, processing. I knew something was wrong. When I got sick of my party, I could tell she wasn't really worried. How could you tell? She didn't cry. When I fell off my bike last year and broke my arm, she cried. But when I was really sick, she just looked mad. John pulled his son closer. I'm sorry you had to go through that. Are you sad about Mom? John thought about the question. Was he sad? Or just relieved that the nightmare was over? I'm sad that she made choices that hurt our family. But I'm not sad that you're safe now. Me too. The trial began 11 months later. John had used the time to establish a new routine with Cass, who was seeing a child psychologist and doing much better. The boy still slept with his repaired teddy bear, but the nightmares had mostly stopped. Brina had helped John navigate the legal system. As next of kin, she'd been appointed as Cass's guardian ad litem, ensuring his interests were protected throughout the proceedings. John sat in the gallery as the prosecutor laid out the state's case. The evidence was presented methodically, building the story piece by piece, the toxicology reports, the plant material found in Cass's stomach, the forged insurance documents, the recorded conversations planning murder. When they played the audio of Mina threatening Cass, several jurors visibly reacted. The recording was crystal clear. You only got sick because you weren't listening. So listen now. Mina's defense attorney tried to argue that she'd been coerced by Ellis, that she was a victim of an abusive relationship. But the timeline didn't support this theory. The insurance policy had been taken out before Ellis even appeared in the emails. Ellis's attorney took a different approach, claiming his client had been manipulated by a desperate woman. But the foxglove processing equipment found at his facility contradicted this narrative. That on the fourth day of trial, the prosecution called Detective Turman to testify about the surveillance operation. The defendants discussed following the victim's father to a campground and pushing him off a cliff. Turman testified. They planned to make it appear accidental. What was the motive? With the father dead, Mrs. Holt would gain custody of the child and access to a substantial life insurance policy she had fraudulently obtained. And what were their plans for the child? After a suitable period of mourning, they planned to kill him as well, making it appear as though he had taken his own life due to grief over losing his father. The courtroom was silent as Turman described the recorded conversation in detail. John never took the stand. The prosecutor had decided his testimony wasn't necessary, given the strength of the physical and audio evidence. Cass never had to testify either. His recorded statements to the child psychologist were admitted as evidence, but he was spared the trauma of facing his mother in court. The jury deliberated for 6 hours, guilty on all counts for both defendants. Petit sentencing. Mina's attorney pleaded for leniency. Your Honor, my client is a mother who made terrible decisions under extreme emotional stress. She's already lost her family and her freedom. Mercy would serve justice better than maximum punishment. The judge, an older woman with 30 years on the bench, was unmoved. Mrs. Holt, you poisoned your own child to protect an extramarital affair. You forged legal documents for financial gain. You planned to murder your husband and eventually your son for insurance money. These are not crimes of passion or poor judgment. These are calculated acts of evil. She sentenced Mina to 11 years in state prison, with no possibility of early release. Ellis received 14 years in federal prison for the weapons charges in addition to his state sentence. As the bailiff led Mina away, she turned to look at John one last time. He met her gaze without flinching, his expression showing nothing but cold satisfaction. She had tried to destroy his family. Now she would spend the next decade behind bars while he rebuilt their lives without her. John was awarded full custody of Cass without opposition. Mina's parental rights were terminated as part of her plea agreement, ensuring she could never seek contact with their son. The insurance company voided the fraudulent policy and launched their own investigation into Mina's activities. They discovered she had attempted similar schemes with previous boyfriends, though none had progressed as far as actual harm. That Ellis's tactical training facility was shut down by federal authorities. The investigation revealed he'd been selling weapons to unlicensed buyers and had connections to several extremist groups. John received letters from Mina during her first month in prison. He returned them unopened, as he had promised himself he would. Some betrayals were unforgivable, and attempting to murder their child fell into that category. Cass asked about the letters only once. "Do you want to read what Mom wrote?" he asked over breakfast one morning. "No," John replied. "Do you?" Cass thought about it seriously, then shook his head. "I don't think she would say anything good." "Probably not." 6 months after the trial, John started dating again. Clover Martinez was a librarian at the school where he taught. She was patient with Cass, bringing art supplies when she visited and never pushing for more than friendship. "She's nice," Cass told John one evening after Clover had helped him with a school project. "And she doesn't have any secrets." "How can you tell?" "She looks at both of us when she talks." Mom used to look away when she was keeping secrets. John realized his son had learned to read people in ways most children never had to. It was a survival skill that made him proud and sad at the same time. That a year after Mina's sentencing, John and Cass began building a tree fort in the woods behind their house. Rowan helped with the construction, teaching Cass how to use power tools safely. "What should we call it?" John asked as they installed the floor joists. Cass considered this carefully. "Fort Truth," he said, "because we only tell the truth here." Fort Truth it is. They worked on the fort every weekend for 2 months. John taught Cass about measuring twice and cutting once, about the importance of strong foundations, about how good work required patience and attention to detail. Clover visited often, bringing sandwiches and juice boxes. She and John would sit on the ground and watch Cass test the rope ladder or adjust the pulley system for hauling supplies. "He's resilient," she observed one afternoon as Cass directed Rowan in hanging a tire swing. "He had to be. That's not fair, though. 7-year-olds shouldn't need to be resilient." John agreed, but he was proud of his son's strength. Cass had survived something that would have broken many adults, and he was thriving. But on the day they finished the fort, Cass insisted on installing a lock on the door. "Why do we need a lock?" John asked. "So no one bad can ever get in," Cass explained, testing the mechanism. "This is our safe place." John watched his son secure their sanctuary and felt something settle in his chest that had been wound tight for over a year. "Exactly how it should be," he said. They climbed up into Fort Truth together and looked out through the windows Cass had helped cut. The view stretched across their property and into the mountains beyond, where morning mist clung to the peaks. "Dad," Cass said, "are we going to be okay now?" John put his arm around his son and pulled him close. "We're going to be better than okay." And for the first time since that terrible birthday party, John believed it was true.